Hello everybody. I wanted to take a few minutes here in this video to touch on the material that we've covered for week one. I promised I won't spend hour upon hour creating video lectures. I don't think that's always helpful, but what I do think is helpful is that I do spend some time talking about the material and what I really want you to consider as we read or as you cover the material. First, hopefully you have looked at the John Green video that I posted. Maybe you've seen some of his videos in the past. They're fun, they're meant to be fun, but they're also meant to be pretty informative and provide a lot of information, which he does. His discussion of the war with Mexico, that's where we start this class. So that's why I posted that video, so that we get a little bit of a refresher and a starting point for this class. So if you haven't watched it, go watch it. If you are unclear on some of the things he talks about, watch it again. It's not very long. But here's the key, right? The Mexican-American War. A war that we don't talk about a lot, a war that a lot of younger school children are not familiar with, that even some older folks may not be familiar with this war, and how important it actually is moving forward towards the Civil War in this country. But number one, go back, take a look at the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo of 1848, which outlines what America gets as a result of their victory in the war with Mexico. And there are a few things in there that are critical, right? And the most critical thing, I would argue, is that we acquire a new 500,000 square miles of territory from Mexico. And that really kind of fills out the nation as we know it. If you looked at a map of the nation after we add the land that we acquire from Mexico, it looks very similar to the map that we see today. It's not identical. There are a few changes yet to come, but it's very similar, right? So what has it done? And Potter makes it a point to let you know that it's kind of two-pronged, right? We acquire this land, we now look like the nation we've always believed that we should be, thanks to manifest destiny, that a term that's coined by John O'Sullivan in 1845 that says we as America and Americans should control the continent from coast to coast, from the Atlantic to the Pacific. War with Mexico has done that. This is the high water mark, really, of what we believe America should be. Right? As a result, this is a culmination of American nationalism, right? This idea of us as a nation, as a people. We've done it with the war with Mexico. We've achieved what we've been working for since the beginning, right? So it's a big deal. Americans, North and South, are enthusiastic about this war. It's popular. They're enthusiastic about the results. People believe in manifest destiny. They believe that this is what we should be doing. God says so, right? That's what manifest destiny means. God has ordained that we control the continent from coast to coast. So we have it. Ironically, as Ralph Waldo Emerson points out, that land is a dose of arsenic. Right? I want you to think about what that means. And we're going to talk about that in the forums this week, right? What does it mean that this land, this accomplishment, and I'll use air quotes for that, this accomplishment of achieving control over the entire continent, why is it such a problem? Okay, and it is. It's going to become a problem. And that problem is sectionalism. What is sectionalism? If you're not sure, go back and refer or review that term. But sectionalism, in a nutshell, is that we're a big country. We have a lot of diverse population. People have a lot of different interests. People have a lot of different goals and ambitions and ideas about what this country should be. We've always had it. We always will. We have sectionalism to this day. You know, those of us here living in Indiana, we have different goals and objectives than people who live in Texas or Alaska or Hawaii. Right? We had it back then, but we had political parties that held us together as a nation. Democrats and Whigs at this time, they exist in the North and South. They exist throughout different sections of the nation, and that's really kind of the glue that binds us together. This new land is going to change all of that, and we have to go back prior to the treaty in 1848 to what we know as Wilmot's Proviso. Wilmot is a representative from Pennsylvania who proposes in an addendum to a bill that any land acquired from war with Mexico should be slave free, should be free territory, right? This is a kind of a landmine, right? Because up until now, what has controlled slavery? What has determined where slavery can exist and where it can't? Well, throughout the creation of the nation and states and territories, different laws have applied to different regions of the nation. And now we have this new 500,000 square miles. What's going to apply there? Of course, Northerners, you might suspect, would like to see this territory become free. And Southerners, you might suspect, think differently, that maybe this should be slave territory, or at the very least, that the government does not have the power to say whether or not slavery can exist in this new territory or not. So that's the problem. Now the nation splits sectionally along a line north and south, right? A line between Northerners and Southerners. And that's the key moment that's going to propel us towards the Civil War. Up until now, we've been able to compromise, and we're going to compromise yet again, don't get me wrong, because obviously the war's not going to happen immediately. But we've been able to stall this question of slavery. Not anymore. Wilmot's Proviso, the war with Mexico, this new land is going to force the nation to answer this question. Are we a nation of slavery, or are we a nation of freedom? Okay, so that's what Potter is, in the reading that you do so far, that's what he talks about. So there are some things to think about there. Nationalism, what does that mean? What kind of nation are we, nationalistically speaking, in the antebellum period? Sectionalism, what does that mean? How is the nation divided? How has it been divided? And what happens suddenly with the Mexican-American War that divides us north and south? All right. The Wilmot Proviso, make sure you understand that. Make sure you understand the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and you can put some of your thoughts and information to the forum this week, which I'll talk about here in a minute. One other thing I want to talk about, Johnson's Soul by Soul. We just kind of get into the intro of that book. I don't want to give you too much reading this week, so we just got the introductory chapter there. But here's what I want you to think about. Potter's going to argue, what is it that's going to now drive us towards war? Why can't we solve these problems of sectionalism, of this new land? What is it? What prevents the nation from remaining united and leads to civil war? Well, it's going to be, according to Potter, slavery. Slavery is the divisive issue. That's fine. We understand that slavery existed. We understand that slavery is a contributing factor to the Civil War. And that's something that I want you to think about in the forum this week in the discussion. But I emphasize in my classes that we need to understand slavery deeply, more deeply than just it is an economic tool or a system of economics. It is more than a labor force or a labor system. What does it mean to be a human being that's enslaved? And that's what we're going to try to understand as we read Johnson's book this semester. And I want you to think about that this week as well. Think about the violence of slavery. And of course you're like, of course slavery is violent. You know, people are beaten, they're whipped, They have feet and hands amputated as punishment. They're sometimes lynched or hung or executed or murdered, whatever. But there's so much more to it than that, right? Think about it from the position of being an enslaved human being. Think about it as being a enslaved African American in antebellum America. What does that mean? What level of control that white slave owners or white, even just whites in general, had over slaves. I want you to start to try to put yourself into that position. It's very abstract for us to sit and think, what it must have been like to be an enslaved person. We can't put ourselves in that position because hopefully none of us have ever or will ever experience that. So it's hard for us to really understand it. We have to put our minds to it to understand what that means. And think about the commodification of a human being. All right, and that's what Johnson gets into here. Turning a person into a piece of property, right? As you have a car or your TV or your computer that you're doing this on, that you can do as you wish with, right? Think about the control you have over these inanimate objects, right? Think about putting that control over a human being, controlling every move they make, every choice they make or don't make, every relationship that they have. And I think that's one of the most violent parts of slavery, is the ability of a white slave owner to rip apart families, right? To separate husbands from wives and vice versa, to separate parents from children. How violent is that? And I want you to think about that as we go forward during the semester, and we'll talk about that in your forum this week. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I want to just briefly mention the discussion. You have your discussion 1 due this week, which means you need to go in, look at the discussion, and answer the questions that I have there. That's due by Thursday night, and then you're required to respond to 2 of your classmates, at least 2 of their posts, and that's due by next Sunday, the Sunday of week 1 at midnight. Look at the rubric under resources, which tells you the grade breakdown. It's worth 40 points. Be sure to incorporate material that we've covered. I expect proper etiquette in the forums, and anytime you use sources or you incorporate material from outside, be sure to cite your sources. We have to do that, even though this is kind of an informal discussion arena. But be sure and do those forums. They're very important. They're an integral part of the class, and they're really what drives us going forward. Okay, I look forward to what everybody has to say. I look forward to hearing your introductions and meeting everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week, and take care.